All right. Hi, everyone. Just real quick, I wanted to take a minute to record a video to show you a little bit about Friday's post-podcast response. Um, so um, if you are viewing this and you have not yet listened to the podcast, I would suggest you take a little bit of time, go back, listen to the podcast, and then view this video. You can by all means look at it to see what to expect. But I'm going to show you how to get to the podcast response assignment and then just lead you through a couple clarifying questions or clarifying points of instruction. So first things first, in our course, with the changes that we made, you can either go into the Unit 1 folder and see the assignment in the Friday folder, or you can see upcoming if you are before Friday, October 2nd, and click on the assignment directly from our course homepage, which is kind of nice. If you do this and you click this link, it'll take you directly to the assignment. I'm going to go through the longer way in case you did not get a chance to do this before Friday. So you go to the week 4 folder. The podcast assignment was on Friday, the 2nd of October. And it's pretty easy. It's the only thing we're expecting you to do on Friday. So the Zoom meeting probably would have been really short. I could not attend because I am not available this Friday, which is why I'm doing this video. So hopefully Mr. Corrigan has kind of pointed you in this direction. So once you are ready, you open the Myths and Legends podcast response. It's going to show your screen a little bit differently, as you guys know, but here is what the assignment looks like. So hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. If you've listened to it, it's a long story. It's a multi-part story. It's something that I really enjoyed and felt connected well to what we've been learning about China so far in class. And hopefully it answered some of your questions you might have had about the Great Wall of China or ancient China. Once you've listened to it and you feel like you have a grasp on the story and you really get it, then you come here and you see that you have 2 parts for the Myths and Legends, Another Brick in the Wall podcast. Part 1, you're going to be asked to choose 2 items from a quote-unquote menu of reader responses. This might feel a little bit like the end of last year whenever we went virtual and you had a lot of different responses you could choose from. It's kind of like that. I wanted to give you options because I want you to choose whatever you feel strongest in. So there are 6 options here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I am asking you to choose 2 from that menu and complete the response by following the instructions. Once you've done that, you get to part 2, which is going to be another opportunity for you to practice ACE paragraph writing. This will connect to what we learned about theme at the beginning of the week. So you're going to want to possibly go back to that thematic archetype slideshow or go back to the Monday folder and skim through that. So I'll come back to part 2 in a minute. Let's continue talking about part 1. So part 1 is what we call a reader response. I've put together 6 options for responding to a verbal audio storytelling episode. Instead of reading, you were asked to just sit and listen. You might have been doing something else while listening, but you need to have been fully engaged. To make sure that you got a good grasp of the story, I'm asking you to respond in 2 ways, and here they are. If you would like, number 1, you can choose to analyze the setting like we learned about last week. There are a multitude of settings in this story, and often the setting impacts what is happening to the characters within the story. For this option, I'm asking you to choose 1 setting over the course of the entire podcast and just describe it. What archetype might this setting best fit of all the archetypes we looked at? What are some of the details of the setting? So reference very specific evidence and details from the podcast episode. And here's the most important question. How does the setting impact the characters or the story overall? Okay, so again, multiple settings from the beginning of the story to the very end of this 40-minute podcast. Number 2, character. This is a chance for you to continue looking at characters. I am asking you to describe 1 primary character or main character in this episode. Just describe them. Don't worry about spelling accuracy. These are ancient Chinese names, and If you're not completely confident in spelling it correctly, that's okay. Do your best. What character archetype do you think this character would best fit? So we've been talking about character archetypes a lot, I know, but this is just another chance for you to reinforce that. And then the most important thing that I really want you to take time on for option 2, how does your character evolve over the course of the story? How do they change? Do they change? Are they dynamic or are they static? So do they have ups and downs, and do they grow, or do they stay exactly the same over the course of the story? Number 3, plot. Basically beginning, middle, and end. If this one's kind of creative. If this podcast were to have a sequel episode or a part 2 episode, what would it be about? At the very end, we have sort of a climactic ending to the story, a tragic ending to the story. If there was a follow-up story, what would it be about? So in this option, describe in 3 to 6 sentences the details that would be a pitch to have a sequel for Another Brick in the Wall. If you were going to approach the Myths and Legends podcast host and say, I'm going to do a sequel, I'm going to make something up, what would you do? Describe that in 3 to 6 sentences. Option 4, another look at character. This one's another creative one as well. If you could interview a character within the story, dead or alive, who would you interview? Who would you choose to interview? And then from that point, I'm asking you to write down 3 very high quality questions that you would ask. And then the most important part, what would their answers be if you were to make a good educated guess? So if you ask a character a quality question, not just what's your name, something that has some meat to it, something that is open-ended, something that they could talk about for a while. Ask the question and then give a proposed response. Do 3 questions. 3 questions, 3 responses. Option number 5 is character. So compare 2 characters. For this one, we're going to continue practicing our comparison skills. So you have different and similar characters in this story. For this option, I'm asking you to choose 2 characters and identify how they are similar and how they are different. And the hardest and most important part of looking at similarities and differences is to try to decide why. Why are they similar? What might be the cause or the reason for their similarity? And then what might be the cause or reason for their difference? So that's option 5. And then option 6 for artistic people, for those of you who are really good at art, I'm asking for you to sketch an important scene from this episode. Then, after you sketch by hand, I want you to take a picture of this sketch. Hopefully you have a phone that can do this. You could use your school laptop to take the picture. And then I want you to be able to save that, attach it to this file, and the last thing you do is describe your sketch in 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, so those are your 6 options. From easy to hard, it really depends on what kind of student you are and what your skill set is. You can choose whatever you want. Down here is where I want those responses. So if you chose option 2 and then option 5, I just need you to label them for me here. So part 1, response number 2, if you did 2, and let's say you did part 1, response number 5. Okay, so just make sure you identify those really clearly for me. So that is part 1. Hopefully that won't take you too long. Part 2 is what everyone's going to be required to do, and you're all going to be required to do the same thing. Thematic analysis paragraph, an ACE paragraph, another chance of you practicing writing skills. And if you haven't noticed, we're practicing writing and we're doing all this writing practice because we're slowly building to writing a full essay with multiple paragraphs. So this is your chance to practice and get some feedback on that. Using your theme archetype slideshow that we talked about on Monday earlier in the week, I am asking you to write a full ACE structured paragraph. And I want you to write about theme, which could be hard. So if you're not confident at all in theme yet, go back to the thematic archetype slideshow. Once you feel like you are confident in theme, you need to think about this story that you just read. And you need to choose a thematic subject that connects to the story that you know that you could write about. From there, I need you to go from thematic subject and develop a full thematic statement. And if you're not sure what the difference is, there is a slide in this slideshow that deals explicitly in how to take thematic subjects and turn them into thematic statements. And you can find that on slide 14, okay? So if you want, go to that slideshow, look at slide 14 again as an example for a thematic statement versus a thematic subject. Your goal is to write a full body paragraph that starts with an argument. The thematic statement about the podcast is, and then drop that. Then you need to cite specific evidence. Where in the podcast do we see evidence that supports your thematic argument or your thematic statement? Okay, so drop in evidence. For example, this happens here, so on and so forth. If you're wanting a number, you could go for up to 3 pieces of evidence. I'd say between 1 and 3. Sometimes the more the better. Don't overdo it though. And then explain. This is the hardest but the most important part. This is your chance to really dive into analysis. What is the larger significance or importance of your theme? So if you're talking about love and you're making a thematic argument about love, what is the bigger importance that this podcast reveals about the subject of love? How might this subject, how might this thematic argument be the driving force of the story? How is the author or the person who created this ancient myth, using the subject of love to reveal something bigger about life? And so this is your chance to really stop and explain the why, the importance of the thematic statement overall. Okay, so once you're ready, you can begin drafting it down here. If you want to break it down, just like directly answer A and right here, and then C and right here, and then E and right here, that's fine with me. I don't mind. If you're ready to start putting together paragraphs all together into a block, that's also cool. Okay, so that is it. I will be available a little bit on Friday. If you have questions, you can always send me a message. Mr. Corrigan will be available as well, as always, if you need anything. And good luck. And I hope you all have a good time with this. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Happy Friday.